Hello, fellow Earthlings. Welcome to Level Your Playing Field. This is part two of a two-part segment that I started last week regarding a lot of constitutional concerns. But this is also Easter week, and tomorrow is Good Friday, and Sunday is Easter Sunday. And I wanted to share with you a video clip that Glenn Ouellette put together celebrating or profiling the Easter story. So whenever you're ready, John.
If in fact it's true that Jesus rose from the dead, he conquered the final enemy, death itself, everything has changed. If he rose again, life will never be the same as we know it. The gospel is the good news. It's the good news about God sending his son Jesus, who came to triumph in this life, who came to live a sinless life, a perfect life, a selfless life. Then he would give his life as a sacrifice on the cross. But he did not just die. He rose again on the third day. Resurrection is what makes the news good.
Emmanuel, you are here with us. You are here with us. Unfailing love, you have overcome. You have overcome.
keep preaching the victorious champion that our King Jesus really is. Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Jesus is the victorious King of ages.
He made you well. You are here with us. You are here with us. I'm feeling love. You have overcome. You have overcome.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Glenn. I didn't get a chance to review that because Glenn was running late, and yesterday I couldn't get to go to his home to pick up this clip. For the purpose of validating that I believe that Christ came to this planet, we share this Easter message. But I have a lot of questions that I don't think I've ever heard anybody pose, in the sense of all of the other countries all over this planet that see God as a similar entity, except that in their depiction of God and a higher being, a supreme being, it's not called Christ. So I just wonder how all of these nations from biblical times, or even before recorded biblical times, how they came to know that there was a spiritual connection between human life and the universe. It's just something that I don't think I've ever heard anybody speak to with regard to the very many depictions of a higher entity, of a higher supreme being, as in Buddha and Allah and the Great Spirit. But that's for another time. I wish everybody who celebrates Easter and believes in that form of Christianity, that they enjoy the benefits, the positive benefits of believing in a higher supreme being. Now, last week, I started a segment, and I had to break it into two parts because of another video that I aired for Glenn Ouellette, celebrating St. Patrick's, which was a wonderful clip. So this is part two of my segment, as I inquire as to what responsibility insurance providers may have regarding the selling of insurance policies to rental property owners and rental agencies whose apartments are out of code compliance. Do they have their own inspectors come in to check out a property or properties owned by these customers who are looking for insurance coverage? Do they check yearly or any other time any other time frame to see if the building is up to code? Do they check with City Hall Building and Code Compliance Department to see what kind of history any property owner has with a specific building or buildings. If the property owner cannot get insurance, does the city give them a code of compliance certificate anyway? And this is much like a question regarding, excuse me, these concerns and circumstances like Carfax. Now you can go to a website and put in the VIN number of an automobile, and you can find out the history of that car. So I'm just wondering if City Hall has anything similar with regard to the current or prior history of a property that is not code compliant. Are they up to code? Are tenants safe in these buildings? If not, how do they qualify for insurance coverage in the first place? Why aren't insurance companies held accountable for any proven negligence on their part when they provide insurance coverage on a less than code compliant property in the short or the long term, as was the case with 32 Green Street? The owner of that property was allegedly rewarded by her insurance provider a check after a fire destroyed what was left of the rental property, after it was condemned as uninhabitable and closed down by the fire and city department due to rabid housing code violations. Why should a landlord receive compensation for having violated the rights and the safety of their tenants and the expected but not provided with housing code compliance as required by the city of Manchester, New Hampshire? Where does the buck stop here, and why does it appear that breaking the law and putting human lives in serious jeopardy on many levels is a perceived, accepted business as usual process and procedure within the insurance community and City Hall? The taking of a life in this country is called murder or manslaughter. Just because it occurred in a housing violation set of circumstances should not negate the fact that it contributed to the death of a human life on American soil, also known as constitutionally protected expectation in our country, city, and state. So why does it appear that insurance providers do not appear to take a very serious look at a property owner's reputation and or condition of a property that provides tenancy for human beings? And why doesn't the City Housing Inspection Department take a very serious and long look at the fact that how did a building or buildings owned by an individual or agency qualified for insurance coverage while being out of code compliance? If housing crimes were treated as such, if arrests were made and once proven charges were made, then the property owner could not qualify for insurance any more than an automobile owner who has a record of violations, who loses their license due to repeated violations pertaining to the safety of themselves and others. When anyone commits a crime against another, most especially the injury or the death of another, again I say, in this country it is a criminal offense. That is, with the perceived exception of property owners' responsibility to be operating within the rule of law and operating a safe code-compliant housing property or properties. Add to this the perception that for decades, some housing inspectors have turned a blind eye and deaf ear to these unresolved housing code violations, and it would appear that it is a kind of business transaction, perceived quick, ready cash or favor to be collected upon when the need arises. Federally funded agencies appear to also have a kind of carte blanche, if you will. As I have mentioned, I live and have lived in federally funded housing. From the outset, the landlord appeared to be able to get away with non-compliance of federal housing codes. The only landlord who ever provided decent and code-compliant housing before my work-related disability occurred were Mr. and Mrs. O'Malley, and they were burned by the broken promise of my workers' compensation claim to the tune of $6,340 in back rent. They were assured by my attorney that I deserved to win my workers' compensation claim. Then he threw my case under the bus, figuratively speaking, and the O'Malleys were left without restitution. They believed my attorney and they witnessed my disability, as both of them were physicians. So they provided shelter for me for a whole year, waiting for the outcome of my hearing at Concord, New Hampshire's Workers' Compensation Board. They lost, as well as you, the taxpayer, and myself. So when, if ever, are these pressing matters going to receive the legal attention and scrutiny they urgently require to stem the flow and or hopefully stop altogether the frauds seemingly sanctioned by so many who oversee these processes and procedures at the local, state, and federal levels of taxpayer-funded programs? How much taxpayer dollars are going to be continued to be allowed to be looted by these seemingly unstoppable fraudulent processes of not only unconstitutional denial, but criminal as well? In part one of this two-part segment, the Tina Turner song Thunderdome, in it she refers to a last call for the last generation to fight for their existence. Part of the wording of this song is living under the fear till nothing else remains. It is fear that has held humankind hostage all over this planet. How many allegedly free Americans live under the fear of retaliation from those who consistently violate expected constitutional processes? And why has there been no updated or caught up with the much needed but seemingly unavailable protective mechanisms in and of an allegedly free country? How and or why has Mayor Gatzis and his perceived posse of violators been able to get away with it? I am reminded of the word Teflon, as I referenced in a prior program. Years ago, Teflon Don was used to describe an individual who was being held legally accountable for his perceived criminal activities in this country. I couldn't help but apply it to Mayor Gatzis as well, as it seems he can get away with anything. Again, one has to wonder why and how, and what is the purpose and or agenda behind these perceived and continuous violations of protocol and the rule of law, and why isn't higher level legal authority not investigating these concerns, most especially at the federal level? Can he be so important in the perceived scheme of things that he can be allowed to continuously violate the rights and much needed but not receive protection each and every citizen in this community is entitled to? Fear hangs over many when they seek what they seek is not provided. Threats, bullying, hazing, both verbal and physical, abusive and unrecognized needs appear to be the only operational procedure exercised in these concerns. There does not seem to be any legal contribution of investigation from Concord and the federal level of law. How come? These approved bids regarding school books and building materials, how does anyone know if they will provide the best quality service and material associated with the approved bid, especially if the bid and the bidder were part of a rigged outcome? How many times have those who are awarded a contract with a city or state used less than quality materials and or construction of their processes in this country's history? Why must perceived rigging be an accepted part of these processes? Isn't that illegal? And the reason that I referenced that was because on the internet at examiner.com, Levasseur charges Gatzis corrupted LED street lighting bidding processes. And he's very adamant about the fact that it appears to have gone to someone who should not have received it. So, again, the question is how and why does that happen? And why is it allowed to happen? How many times have those... Oh, I already read that. Why must perceived rigging be an accepted part of these processes? Isn't that illegal? So, again, one has to ask, who and what is behind these perceived violations of operational procedures? Education book publishers, construction companies, real estate brokers, just to name a few. Everything that pertains to the expected operational procedures in this city is up for questioning. Restaurants with less than compliant clean water systems, indoor air pollution, code violations of the yin-yang. Yet it is business as usual. Licenses and permits seem to be something one can get without too much trouble, even though they are operating outside of the expected scope of whatever businesses they are in, as in slum landlordism. And so what about the inspection processes of these projects? Will they turn a blind eye and deaf ear to less than expected compliant processes in order to come in under budget for the project they are working on? Again, fear is attached to these concerns. Additional fears, as in whether children are safe at school due to faulty long-term neglect but much-needed repairs, of needed attention, protection from bullying, children fearing to go to school or even riding the school bus to get to school. Why should children be subjected to living with fear or bullying? Employees having to deal with selective treatment provided by employers who favor or have other unfair reasons for treating some of their personnel with extra tolerance when they violate the rights of another employee. Racism and sexism on the job and in almost any place where people gather together. Colleges, universities for decades allowing the rankest kind of criminal activity regarding sexual assault, rape, humiliating practices in order to be accepted as a pledge. Where did this kind of thinking come from? Why must anyone be put through humiliating processes ordered by someone they hardly know in order to become a member of a sorority or a fraternity that commits these violations on others? This is considered higher education? Who made these processes possible and why? So again, I repeat myself regarding pledging. Could it be that this is a way of weeding out future competitors once graduated? Could the catty meow mentality of some female fraternity sisters be the reason they have to debase and or humiliate a pledge or make her a victim of a GHB cocktail which leads to sexual assault and or rape? These are supposed to be the future members of our world in all manner in title and position. Yet college and universities appear to have failed to see or recognize the unconstitutional and illegal processes committed on college and university campuses all over this country. All of the issues advocated by advocate producers are in line with the constitutional violations on a grand scale here at TV23, local, state, and federal, and yet it seems it is not taken as seriously or consistently as it should and needs to be. Again, one has to ask why and how come. What is the end purpose of these unconstitutional agendas? The continued appearance is that some within City Hall and the mayor's office want to muzzle as much as they can or intrude themselves on the right to freedom of speech and expression. There appears to be such a tightrope over this studio at 1045 Elm Street that if one is not careful, they could be found hanging from one. The word tyrannical also comes to mind. If he cannot get his way, he becomes angry. So, Mr. Gatsis, why do you appear to be so hell-bent on getting your way and only your way? What reason do you have for violating the rights of this city's citizens and expected constitutional but not exercised rule of law? Who are these entities you appear to mingle with in the world of business or businesses that want to worm their way into our community for less than constitutional reasons? You appear to be more of a dictator than a constitutionally minded official of an American city and federal governing. Could you be on a mission to advance complete and total dismembering of the constitutional right of the citizens of this community? Total slavery en masse? In the Tina Turner song, she also states, "We don't need another hero." We the people already have our own heroes, the Constitution of these United States, the Bill of Rights, the Emancipation Proclamation, the Civil Rights Bill, plus positive and protective specific legislation to address specific outlawisms, and all of the lives that have paid the price for protecting these rights, our American Armed Forces men and women. There is no guarantee that a newly elected mayor who is not an independent will do any better. It is a chance voters take each and every election, mainly because the power of the press and perceived cronies of these processes work diligently to focus the best possible light on their chosen elected official and perceived crony. But for sure, the rule of law at the city and state levels need to be resurrected here in Manchester and Concord, New Hampshire, because again, we are supposed to be a free country where democracy is supposed to exist but does not. Re-electing Mayor Getzes would and could only prove to further unconstitutional violations already evident in and by the mess that this city is in for many of its citizens. The constitutional processes we the people deserve truly needs a resurrection of its apparent dormant and perceived comatose state, a release from the perceived myopic mindsets that appear to have removed the fact that human lives in an American community deserve the protection of all rights, of setting aside their personal prejudices that appear to condone slum landlordism in this community and actually appear to support by not enforcing the many levels of violation and violations. In other words, they condone unconstitutionality. If the law was the only consideration when addressing a perceived violation, then personal prejudices have no chance of clouding these issues and concerns. But that just is not the case, seeming to appear to believe or to be convinced that some citizens within this community do not deserve the protection of the law. The control factor that appears to give those who think this way the self-serving pleasure of satisfaction that they have been given the permission to do just that, to manipulate, mutilate, and or ignore the rule of law in whatever matter is concerned. Why can't the fire department and the inspectors of the city of Manchester collaborate as a unit of at least two, most especially when or where the concern is a prolonged, unresolved matter of safety for a tenant or a building full of tenants? I received a call last week on my show, in part one of this part two segment, from a citizen of Manchester who shared the way building inspections were done in the 60s and 70s in this community. The interesting part of his call was that he described the fire department as a member of these procedures and that a landlord had 7 days to make the needed repairs. So when did the fire department become an absentee investigative process of housing inspections? Has it ever occurred to the powers that be that firefighters, police officers, paramedics all put their lives on the line when a fire or a gas leak needs their expertise attention? That a building could blow up while firefighters, police, or medical emergency personnel are inside trying to evacuate an injured tenant or tenants from a burning building? Where is the concern for their protection in these matters? I have heard remarks made by citizens that some tenants are disruptive and damage a landlord's property. Yes, this is true, very true. Then why not take the legal steps to hold these kind of property damaging or disruptive tenants accountable financially and legally in a court of law? Have them evicted with cause, show the damage to a judge, have them legally removed from their tenancy at any given rental property they occupied. But to ignore the need for repair due to neglect on a tenant's part or the landlord's part is not a legal excuse to remain non-code compliant. I have another question regarding financial concerns at City Hall. Who audits all of the financial processes made at City Hall, and how often? Who is the comptroller, and what does he or she have to say if asked about the financial accountability factor made and or ordered by Mayor Gatzis or any other city official? Where does the money go? Why was it delegated to the recipient or program? Accountability seems to be a lost art at City Hall regarding many issues. Who contributes to the decision to take monies from one needed concern to fund another? How does that work? When federal funding is received for a need in this community, does the federal government check to see if the money approved and provided for said project or need was used expressly for that project? How can funds provided for one project be given to another without any accountability or reason for it? Couldn't this be construed as fraud? How does a building or project worth a specific amount of money be sold for way less than originally valued? Who are the recipients of all of these transactions, and why were they given to them in the first place? Were the kickback parts of the process, or some future yet collective favor to be received as needed? How is bidding processed in Manchester, New Hampshire? Isn't it supposed to be a closed bidding format? So how can it go to a favored recipient as opposed to the best offer in a closed bid format? And what guarantee do these processes offer from an entity who was chosen in this manner? Will he, she, or they use trusted materials during their services or whatever they might need? Will they cut corners even more to keep as much of the money they received for said project? Are building materials checked by those at City Hall who are supposed to monitor these processes and uses of material and or materials? So there is much that is unknown to the public who have a right to know. I received an email that explodes with potential thought processes regarding the Koch brothers and their perceived empire of trying to destroy our constitutional way of life in this country and its territories. And it was from End Citizens United. This is a website that is fighting the likes of Koch brothers and other business entities in our country that are trying to subjugate or totally annihilate the constitutional processes of our country. And it says this is who we're fighting against. This was David Koch's platform when he ran for vice president in the 1980s. The abolition of Medicare and Medicaid. We favor the repeal of the fraudulent, virtually bankrupt, and increasingly oppressive Social Security system. Pending that repeal, participation in Social Security should be made voluntary. We also support the abolition of the Environmental Protection Agency. We support repeal of all laws which impede the ability of any person to find employment, such as minimum wage laws. Nothing has changed since then. Medicare, Social Security, and the EPA, the minimum wage, are all something that the Koch brothers want all gone. And the website for this information is admin@endcitizensunited.org. So I couldn't help but think. So this is what came into my head as I was reading this. I received an email that explodes with potential thought processes regarding the Koch brothers. The sender of this email content may be right or may be not. However, considering the reported power-hungry image repeatedly provided by media sources, I could not help but wonder if these so-called Americans are bulletproof or immune from injury or worse. History has proven over and over again that when perceived dictators run amok and destroy others, come along to bring them down, usually by a bullet or a bomb. So I cannot help but wonder if the reported stories of the Koch brothers' tyrannical mindset is true, that their days could be numbered or on the scope or crosshairs of an assassin's bullet or worse, as well as some of their cronies who appear to have turned a blind eye and deaf ear to the needs and the survival of the Constitution in favor of being a contributing member of the perceived greed-need club and controlled by Koch Brothers Incorporated. It is something to think about. And it would appear to me from the long history of this city by itself, just Manchester, and then how it appears to extend to Concord, that there's sort of like a Koch brothers mentality incorporated in the way that local politicians and state politicians allow local politicians to get away with the grossest kind of unconstitutionality, and that nobody will pick up the gauntlet, as it were, to enforce or to inquire or to demand accountability from these perceived illegal processes that are totally unconstitutional. As long as personal attacks are the only weapon used, as opposed to the concern for the constitutionality of the person who is being verbally attacked, then you're missing the boat. You're missing the true concerns. I honestly do not wish any harm to anyone, even though they're as reprehensible as they can be. But it's the issues that are of the concern. These people that act as if somehow the Constitution is a barrier that they have to explore and explode into a million little pieces so that most American citizens will be held hostage in their own communities is something that if there was no Constitution, then if we lived in some kind of foreign country where people are enslaved every single day, maybe so. But as long as that Constitution, the Bill of Rights, Emancipation Proclamation, and Civil Rights Bill exist, then we have to fight it. We have to fight it. And I don't care how much money Mr. Gatsis has, which he doesn't seem to use very well to help anybody but himself. He doesn't deserve to hold office of any kind where human rights are concerned or even animal rights are concerned, because he doesn't appear to have the respect for the rule of law that his title is supposed to demonstrate. Now, on a different note, Dr. Betty Martini, I have referenced her many, many times over the years. She called me when I was, when we were at MCAM, and she opened the door to a whole world of information. And so this is the latest regarding aspartame. This study attacks aspartame through another angle, stress on the human system. This may help explain many things, since corticosterone is usually secreted in large quantities when an inflammatory event such as infection or tissue damage occurs. Isn't it interesting that independent, unbiased researchers studying aspartame always find the problems, not only here, but all over the world? And this lady has never, ever been sued for the information that she has shared worldwide with those who receive her emails and with those that she interacts and travels worldwide to communicate with and to be taught and to share the information that they have and the information that she has that are provided by other advocates against this kind of chemical poisoning to the human and animal systems of the world, not to mention the byproducts that end up in our drinking water. Agencies of the government around the world loyal to the manufacturer and the manufacturers and their front groups and trade organizations they fund always ignore proven research studies, unbiased research studies regarding any kind of chemical concern to the human system. What excuse will they use this time? How many times manufacturers just pay somebody to do another study to make sure it doesn't show the real findings? Their modus operandi is getting old. Now, this is some of the toxicity effects of aspartame to the human system and even to the animal system, because sometimes it's in animal food and grain. Seizures and convulsions, dizziness, tremors, migraines, and severe headaches. It can trigger or cause chronic intake as a result. Memory loss, common toxicity effects, slurring of speech, confusion, numbness or tingling of extremities, chronic fatigue, depression, insomnia, irritability, panic attacks, common aspartame toxicity reaction, marked personality changes, phobias, rapid heartbeat, tachycardia, another frequent reaction, asthma, chest pains, hypertension, high blood pressure, nausea or vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, swallowing pain, itching, hives, urticaria, urticaria. Other allergic reactions: blood sugar control, hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia, menstrual cramps and other menstrual problems or changes, impotency and sexual problems, food cravings, weight gain, hair loss, baldness or thinning of hair, burning, urination or other urination problems, excessive thirst or excessive hunger, bloating, edema, fluid retention, infection, susceptibility, joint pain, brain cancer, pre-approval studies in animals to that effect or to that outcome of brain cancer, death itself. Aspartame disease mimics symptoms or worsens the following diseases: fibromyalgia, arthritis, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, lupus, multiple chemical sensitivities, diabetics and diabetic complications, epilepsy, Alzheimer's disease, birth defects, chronic fatigue syndrome, lymphoma, Lyme disease, attention deficit disorder, ADD and ADHD, panic disorder, depression, and other psychological disorders. And this is some of the key words to identify aspartame and its many worded terminologies all over the planet. NutraSweet, aspartame, NutraSweet. There's two spellings of this NutraSweet, NutriSwett, and then NutriSwett. Monsanto products, Kelco, Benevia, Equal $1 million difference giveaway, Team Equal measure, spoonful, Diet Soda, Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, Diet Sprite, Pepsi Light, Pepsi Max, Crystal Light, sweeteners, sugar, artificial sweetener, Acesulfame K, ACESULFAME-K, sucralose, Sunet, Sweet One, Sweet and Safe, Splenda, Stevia, Steviacide, Canderel, Chuker, CHUKER, Misura, MISURA, Manugel, MANUGEL, Kelcogel, Nutrifos, Stable-9, Leaven Light, LEVN-LITE, Ethics, Scientific Fraud, Weight Loss. Now, Pepsi has been flooding television with its pure sugar is sweetening their products, but there's still you have to read your labels. You must read your labels, and there's one missing list. There's one missing definition on this list, and I wrote to to Betty Martini about it. Phenylalanine, PHENYLALANINE, and if you go to any pharmacy and you're looking for an over-the-counter medication, look on the label and you will see that word, PHENYLALANINE. It is a chemical. It is a chemically generated sugar substitute, sugar sweetener. It has killed millions of people across the planet. And when Betty Martini called me, about 5-6 years ago, when we were still at MCAM, it was listed as 20,000, but those were the known. There is a website, Aspartame.com. Mark Gold out of Concord. He has at least 800 pages or more of letters of testimonials written to him by people who experienced the loss of their loved ones or their own medical inhibitions due to the consumption of aspartame or phenylalanine products. Of how one woman had gone to a camp that she started with other volunteers because she thought it was going to be the last time she'd be able to attend that camp because she was so ill. And it turned out that one of the other counselors told her about aspartame. And so she stopped drinking Diet Coke. And it took her a while. It takes about, and let me make sure that you know this. It often takes at least 60 days without any aspartame or NutraSweet or any sugar substitute to see a significant improvement. Improvement in health is also often accompanied by weight loss because this sugar substitute actually causes your internal organs and your skin to swell. Check all labels very carefully, including vitamins and pharmaceuticals. Look for the word aspartame on the label and avoid it. Also, it is a good idea to avoid acesulfame K or sunite, SUNETTE, and ACESULFAME-K. Finally, avoid getting nutrition information from junk food industries, public relations organizations such as IFIC, or organizations that accept large sums of money from the junk and chemical food industries such as the American Dietetic Association. So, over-the-counter medications are just as deadly as prescribed medications that have any kind of an aspartame product in it, no matter what the name is. So if you can educate yourself by learning to identify those words, and you know what, my email is levelyourplayingfield@comcast.net. If you want, and you write to me, I can forward this email content for you because it lists. This is how I got the information from Dr. Betty Martini's email. And it prints out the information that she shares in her emails. So if you would like a copy of the listing of the identification of most of these artificial sugar sweeteners that are so deadly for human consumption, I'd be happy to forward it to you. And also, she has her own website, and it is full of valid information that you could access yourself of, and is Betty M. These are all lowercase. Betty M19 at mindspring.com. That is Betty M as in Mary 19 at mindspring.com. So she's been fighting this fight for a very long time. And mind you, this is a senior age woman. Her husband was a pastor, and when he retired, he gave her his retirement money to fund this advocacy that she funds. And she travels all over the world, and she meets other scientific entities and other advocates in all parts of the world, trying to educate the human population of the deadly side effects of aspartame, or whatever name it's called. And it boggles my mind. I've mentioned this many times on the air over the years. How do hospitals allow aspartame products in their hospital when they have to know that those medications or sodas that they give their patients in the little cans, or anything, Dunkin' Donuts coffee. You know, when you buy a Dunkin' Donuts coffee and they give it to you in a cup, you will see the listing of the sugar content that they check off when they put a sugar product in your coffee. And aspartame is right there, so it's equal. So how is it that our American government has allowed all of these companies to not only manufacture but sell to the unsuspecting public these deadly sugar, chemically generated sugar, artificial sugars that can take and has a deadly effect on a human's well-being. And can you imagine a pet owner who doesn't know, and they've been feeding their beloved pet something that could shorten the life of their pet or cause them a lot of pain and suffering? There are a lot of very callous human beings, and it's hard to call them that because it would appear that they come from a place of absolute darkness with no soul at all, that they could flood our world with all of these poisons, and our own government doesn't protect us from it. And as I've mentioned over and over again, these products were banned in this country until Donald Rumsfeld came into the picture. He had a company, he was the CEO of Searle. And so on the very first day of the Reagan administration, he was brought in to begin the lifting, the illegal lifting, the fraudulent lifting of the ban of aspartame on the world community. And he got away with it. He's one of the biggest mass murderers walking free in this country. And all those that, Michael Taylor and all those that have followed in the FDA, that scientists and other personnel that have allowed these life-taking, unethical, murderous products on the human population of not only our country, but other countries, because they're all in bed together. They're all in bed together, and it's to keep the pharmaceutical companies just rich beyond even accountability. If you keep the world sick, they have to buy prescriptions, either or medicines over the counter, whatever, or prescriptions from some pharmacists and doctors that don't care to tell their patients that this product may have aspartame in it, or phenylalanine, or any other kind of artificial sweetener content. Why do you have to sweeten a pill when it's just going to be gulped? Why do you have to do that? Especially if it's in capsule form, because it's like a little plastic lining. So why do you need an artificial sugar substitute in medicine that is supposed to make you feel better? And it's supposed to do the job of getting you better, but doesn't, and keeps you listless and not feeling quite yourself. I went for my physical with a new primary physician, I believe it was yesterday, the 31st? No, Tuesday. And one of the things that she told me was that the PM medication that I was taking was something I had to stop, because it has a very long affecting I can't think of the word. It's not good for you, because it has a prolonged. It stays in your system. When you think it's washed out of your system, it builds up, and it makes you listless, and it makes you tired, and I've been experiencing that, and I couldn't figure it out. I've taken more naps in the last 6 months than I have in my whole life, because I'm always tired, and it was from this diphenyldramine, YHLDRAMINE, and it's in over-the-counter medications for PM sleep or for painkillers. So if you see that word DIPHENYHYLDRAMINE, don't take it, because it does help you sleep, but it lingers in your system and it builds up in your system. It doesn't flush out. And so she she was very adamant about me not taking that anymore. So now I'm trying to find something that I can take that will help me sleep, because I'm a nervous wreck, because I'm, of my mom and my sister being so fragile right now. And I have another car. The insurance company gave my mother a certain amount of money, and a refund that is expected for my mom to make a down payment. So I now have another car, and Friday I will be able to see my mom for the first time in a couple of weeks. And kudos to Geico Insurance, because they were just terrific, and I really appreciate the fact that they understood the urgency of getting another car, and they just handled the process as quickly as possible, and they didn't jerk me around, and so I have another car. I believe it's time for me to say so long. John? A minute, 2 minutes? Okay, it's time for me to go. I wish you knowledge. I wish you a very happy Easter. And please remember that freedom isn't free. So long until next time.